Top left.
Have all the faces that'll make it small.
Oh, my left.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I was trying to make the faces go away, you know. I was getting uncomfortable with those people staring at me. Anyway, like I said, I'm Ed Self. I started gardening in '85. What happened is I started shift work in '85, and I found out I had all these days off during the week, and I have found out that it was I enjoyed hanging out with old retired gardeners, and so then I went to a couple of Master Gardener programs, and then I took a grafting class at the Master Gardeners. I actually became a Master Gardener back in '87, I think, and the biggest thing is, you know, grafting is not complicated. A lot of people want to pretend like it's a complicated thing. You got to have special tools and special skills. The only wrong, in my opinion, the only wrong way to graft is not to try it at all. So I mean, you got to cut wood. You know, you got to learn how to cut wood and put wood together. So it's pretty easy. And so, like I said, you know, well, I'm gonna try to cover a couple of my favorite grafts. I mean, here's some things that can be rooted. Like I mentioned, there's fig cuttings back there. Fig cuttings root pretty easily on their own roots, whereas there's other stuff that needs to be grafted. You know, if you take an apple or pear, Scion back there, you need to have an apple or pear at home to try to graft it onto. I brought some persimmon wood. It's still kind of early for persimmon. If you take the persimmon wood, I'd recommend storing it in the refrigerator for you know, a few weeks, because what I like to wait for is my persimmon rootstock to have the leaves about halfway emerged before I start grafting. Once the sap starts rising on the rootstock, they're ready. Whereas pears, you know, I've got a completely dormant pear rootstock I brought, and I'm gonna do a grafting demo on it where you can see what it looks like. And then rooting, I mean, the biggest key to rooting, like rooting a fig, is just well draining soil. You know, a lot of people say, oh, I dug this dirt up in my yard, put it in a pot, and I can't figure out why the cutting doesn't root. Well, it's because when you water it, it stays saturated and just rots the cutting. What I found was rooting cuttings, like, you know, this picture here shows you put the cutting about halfway down in the pot and try to let the moisture drain away from the cutting, keep from rotting it. If you keep the dirt saturated, then it's going to rot before it roots. And what I found is most of the time I'm rooting cuttings, if you have it in filtered light like you should, or even in the dark, you shouldn't even have to water it maybe once a week, even maybe once every 10 days. And the biggest reason you want to keep it in the dark is you want some roots to grow before the leaves start emerging. You know, you take a fig cutting right now and stick it out in the sun, the leaves will try to emerge before you get roots. And then that cutting's just going to use up the energy in the cutting and it'll die. So I've got fig cuttings in my laundry room on the counter on a heat mat that I keep in the dark. But now that leaves have emerged, I've got a grow light I've been turning on and actually encourage the leaves to grow more. But initially, I don't worry about any light at all until I start seeing the buds swell, and then I start seeing roots in my cups. And then, you know, the question is, why graft? I mean, you know, as you go through your life, you're going to come across your favorite fruit tree somewhere, you know, your grandmother's house or your neighbor's yard hanging over a fence, and you're going to want to replicate that tree in your own yard. So you need to learn how to graft, because like I said, a lot of stuff is not going to root. If you don't know how to graft it, you're not going to be able to propagate it. You know, and also another thing is, you know, you can go and plant apple seeds, pear seeds, loquat seeds, or whatever. And you may get fruit 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. You don't know. You got a long waiting game ahead of you. Whereas you graft something, you shorten the time to fruiting, and also you have a known, results. You know, you get something from something that tastes good. You know, when you graft it, the outcome is going to be good tasting fruit. Whereas you grow a seedling, you got to wait and see. You grow it 10 years, and then it fruits the first time, and your fruit's not even edible. So normally when I grow seedlings, I grow them for rootstock. And, you know, I don't discourage growing seedlings, because all these selected fruit trees were a seedling someone selected somewhere down the line and decided it's worthwhile replicating. So if you have the room and you have the time, plant seeds. I mean, I was talking to a friend today. He's 78 years old. He was planting seeds today. You know why he plants seedlings? He plants them to give away. You know, I plant seedlings all the time. You come to my house, I'm gonna give you something. And it may be a seedling, but you know, and you might have to wait a long time, but you know, it's also the joy of growing it. And also you graft for dwarfing, cold hardiness, if you want multiple varieties. One thing I recommend, you know, you live in a neighborhood, like a neighborhood lot, a subdivision lot, you can plant one pear tree and put 7 or 8 varieties on it. And then, you know, you can have a longer season of pears versus you only have one pear tree, one variety. When that fruit gets done, you're done for the year. So I recommend if you want a pear tree and you live in a neighborhood, you know, get you a good rootstock and then do some research and find out what is the earliest ripening pear and the latest ripening pear for our area. And you need to put at least those on your rootstock, then get some in the middle. And eventually you'll have your fruit cocktail tree that has pears for a very long season. And you know, you can do that with pears, you can do it with peaches, and also, you know, a lot of peaches, you have peaches with different chill hour requirements. So if you take a peach tree and put 4 varieties on it, you can put some lower chills, high chills, and chill hours just for our area, and you're guaranteed to have some peaches every single year. Whereas if you plant one single peach tree that requires 600 chill hours, we get 450 this year, your peach tree doesn't bloom. So you can take that same peach tree and put a 600 hours, one that requires 600 chill hours, cutting that requires 250 chill hours, all in the same tree. We have a very mild winter, you get peaches on the one that has a low chill. We have a normal winter, you get the peaches on the ones that you expect. So all it does is it gives you more opportunities, and plus most people that live in a smaller lot don't have room for 6 varieties of pears, 6 varieties of peaches. And same with figs. You can put multiple figs on a tree. Even though they root very easily, you can graft them. So you can find the earliest fig, latest fig, figs in between, graft that one big fig tree, and now you've got figs all through the whole summer you can enjoy instead of just one burst of figs, then you're done. And the main reason I graft is just because I can, and I like it. You know, it's just something, you know, I work a very stressful job. I come home and I like putting this stuff together, and I come home after a bad 12-hour shift and I see that little bud squirting out. I'm like, look here, I've done something good that at least makes me feel good. I don't care if anybody else likes it, but I feel good about it. I show it my wife, she says, what am I looking at? I'm very proud of that one little green bud, because she doesn't know that somebody mailed me that piece of wood. It spent 4 weeks in the mail, and then the mail person threw it on the ground out there by the mailbox, and the sun baked on it. And it's a miracle. I mean, I'm very happy with my miracle that just took place. But she's been with me for a while, so she's not easily impressed. And then grafting, I mean, like I said, grafting is just simple. You know, you're taking a branch or bud and you're connecting it to a rootstock. Budding is where you just take one single bud. And I recommend, if you're not grafted before, start out with like cleft grafts. Cleft grafts are pretty easy. And if you do a few things right, you know, you can typically be successful. You know, budwood, you know, people always ask, what's the difference in scion wood, budwood, and then there's rootstock. You know, rootstock is what you use to, you know, you can graft onto. And usually a budwood or cuttings is just something you can root, and scion wood is what you're going to use for grafting. And then, like I said, tea budding, chip budding, there's whip grafts, bark grafts, cleft grafts. But like I said, I recommend starting out with the cleft graft, just, you know, just because it's so simple. And then this is just some timing on when to perform these. You know, the thing is with cleft grafts and whip grafts, I typically do year round. If I'm grafting pears or mulberries, I'd rather do them in the wintertime when the scion and the rootstock is dormant. But I don't let that stop me. If someone across the country offers me wood in the middle of June, I'm gonna have them send it to me. So that's one benefit of learning multiple ways to graft is you can't guarantee when someone's gonna offer you the wood. And what I've found is if someone offers you wood for some rare variety that you want to get, I recommend you to take it, because you never know, that person could pass away, sell their property, and that tree no longer, you know, won't exist, won't be available to you. I had one guy send me some rare wood one time, and I've been begging him for 10 years. He never would send it to me again. So you get that wood, you need to be prepared to know what to do with it. And this is just a simple diagram of cleft graft. I mean, you're basically making a split in your rootstock. You're making a wedge in your scion. You push them together. And the key thing is to line up one side or the other, because a lot of times the scion and rootstock are not going to be the same size. And I'll demonstrate that when I do my hands-on demo with the grafting, is that you see the picture to the bottom of the screen, and you see how the scion is stuck in there, and they just align one side of it. You want to make sure one side is aligned. You're trying to get the maximum cambium contact, because if you don't get cambium contact, this is not going to grow. When I first took my grafting class back in the 80s, you know, the guy gave us instructions. I went home, I grafted 4 pears. They all took it. I was excited. I thought I could graft the whole world. And then I found out I had a whole lot to learn, because I've done my first several grafts that kept failing, because I thought, well, you know what? It looks better to me if you put that scion right in the middle. You put it right in the middle, you have 0 cambium contact, and in your grafted union, it's not going to grow, it's not going to thrive, and it's not going to live. And I was going for pretty. I didn't realize I was aiming for failure at the time. So make sure you always align one side or the other. What I typically look at is which side looks the best, and that's which side I go with. And this is just a whip graft demo. Whip grafting is usually, you know, a little bit, to me, I consider it more advanced, because it creates more opportunities to cut yourself. And so what I recommend too is using very sharp knives. If you use a really sharp, clean knife, the cuts heal faster. So when you cut your hand, you don't have to worry about bleeding as long. I mean, because actually I've cut my hand grafting, and I've used my grafting tape to seal it up where I can continue grafting. But if you use an old raggedy knife, it's going to make a raggedy cut, and so it doesn't heal as clean. And then, you know, whip grafting, like I said, the whip grafting to me, I feel like that's more advanced. You know, you save it for later. I mean, I'll go into more details if people would like me to. I mean, this just shows you how you make your 2 cuts from your whip. And then you got to go, here's where you cut yourself right here, is when you got to make this extra slice right here. Because typically you're pushing a knife toward your hand. And the problem is, one thing I want to mention is when you're doing grafting, do not push the knife through the wood. Rock it. If you rock the knife gently through the wood and your knife is really sharp, it'll slowly move through there. When you push and you got your hands there, all of a sudden it hits a really good soft spot in the wood, and the knife just goes right through it and right in your hand. So never force the knife into the wood unless you're looking for an opportunity to see your own blood. And this is what the finished cut looks like when you push this whip graft together. And like I said, whip grafting is one of my favorite grafts, because it gives you a lot of opportunities for cambium contact. But like I said, I recommend, you know, the biggest thing with grafting is you need to practice cutting wood, because another thing will happen to you is you'll get a really small piece of wood, and it's the only piece of wood that you'll get for this one plant, and it's really rare, really hard to source, and you get a tiny piece of wood. So you don't have room to keep making cuts to figure out how to cut wood. So you better practice cutting on a piece of wood that you don't care about before you get that one piece of wood that you really care about, and you won't have a successful graft. This is bark grafting. You know, if you have a really, like an old pear tree or peach tree in your yard, and you want to cut those limbs back, and you want to, you know, you split the bark and you make the wedge cuts on your scion, you wedge them down in there, and you can wrap that up with, you know, paraffin, and you know, it's a good way to do stuff. And you have it. This is actually a good graft for a really big mismatch in scion and rootstock. And that's some examples of what it looks like, the finished grafts. Here's some tools. You know, I mean, and again, don't get caught up on the tools. You know, I use buddy tape. A lot of people complain about buddy tape because it's $35 a roll or so. And you can buy paraffin. I mean, I bought paraffin. I mean, I bought this. I mean, here's a pack of paraffin M. I think I paid $12 or $15 for this. This roll of buddy tape, I paid $35 for. I'll use it. I mean, the buddy tape is what I'm going to use first. The paraffin works as well. And to me, it's not as. I'll show you the difference when I start doing my demo. I think there's a difference. I think it's worth spending the money, but again, it's your hobby. You choose how you want to proceed in it. And again, here's how you make the cleft graft. If you feel uncomfortable making that graft, push that knife towards your hand, you can put a washer, a spool, anything there. And if your knife slips, it doesn't slice into your hand. But I'm going to show you how to do this without putting something there. It's all about how you turn your hand. One of my worst cuts I ever got when I was first doing cleft grafts is I had my fingers around the rootstock and I was doing the cut with my fingers, the knife going right across my fingers. My wife asked me something that I thought didn't make sense, and I looked up and I kept pushing the knife and I pushed it right into my fingers, and I got to see my own bone right there, and so I don't recommend. Another thing, don't talk and look away when you're grafting. When you're pushing the knife in the wood, pay attention to what you're doing. But like I said, if you get cut, don't let that scare you. Just try to be careful though. Try to avoid getting cut. And clean your tools with alcohol. I used to try to keep a little spray bottle of alcohol. I found that to be too much trouble. I buy these little packs of little alcohol swabs. I can shove a lot of these in my pocket and just tear off and use one as I need it. Because every time I grabbed for that bottle of spray, it always evaporated or leaked out and it was never there. These are always there, so I like these better. Label. If you're going to go to the trouble of grafting, label. It's if you feel like it's worth grafting, put some sort of label. If it's just grandma's apple, where you can kind of keep up where you got it from and why. That's one irritation I think with figs is you see Grandma Smith's fig and Betty Joe's fig. It's all the same fig. They bought the same brown turkey fig from Tractor Supply. They don't know what it's called. And so they all just keep hanging a name on it. And so you got all these fig varieties and some of them are the same figs. And this is my tools I like to use right here. And you see the linerless rubber splicing tape. That's what I like to use to seal a graft union. My buddy tape is underneath my knife there. And then you see my little Excel knife I use, which uses Schick injector blades. And so I have a variety of tools I like to use in different applications, different reasons. But every time somebody sees me using this linerless rubber splicing tape, they think it's a black electrical tape. It is not. The black electrical tape is a vinyl tape that has way more glue on it, and I don't recommend it because it'll girdle the graft union if you get leaved on. This linerless tape will actually expand a little bit, gives a little bit, and actually what I found is when it's out in my greenhouse under sprinklers, it'll start to decay a little bit, so I forget to remove it. But it's really good. Sometimes even the best you try, you make cuts. You can't make another cut on your Scion, and you got to put your graft together, and you look and you see you still have some uneven spaces. You can take this tape and pull the wood together a little tighter, try to squeeze it together, get more cambium contact. And for years, we're talking about grafting knives. For years, I've done all of my grafts with just a utility knife. And what I liked about it is when my blade was dull, I just swapped blades and got another one because I never learned how to sharpen a knife. And if you don't know how to sharpen a knife and don't have access to getting one sharpened, a lot of our farmers markets around here, there usually will be someone there that sharpens knives. And so you can usually take your knives there and get it sharpened. But for probably my first 10 years, my grafting knife was a utility knife. And I had just as much success. Now I have actually grafting knife I use, but this knife's $5. Some people use the little florist knives, but my knife I use now is like a Tina grafting knife that's $110. I use it because it feels good in my hand, and I'm left-handed. So there's left-handed and right-handed knives, and that makes a difference because you want the flat side of the knife on the Scion where you make a nice flat cut. But with practice, you can make flat cuts with these. You just have to practice a little bit more. And this is one of my favorite grafts I use all the time right here. It's kind of like a modified cleft graft. It's a side graft. I like this one when the rootstock is way bigger than the Scion. And I like it when the Scions are just really small. I can make it. But the issue with this one is you need to know how to do other grafts because you're not careful sometimes when you're trying to make the side cut and you push all the way through. And now your top of your rootstock is gone. So now you need to know how to do a different type of graft. But I like this graft here. I mean, you see the third picture to the right, you see how small that scion is versus the rootstock. And that's how you can actually make a good graft with a rootstock scion mismatch. And to me, it's better than a cleft graft. But a lot of people are not comfortable making these kind of cuts, so they go back to cleft graft and it's still easier. And I just want you to see, this is what you're looking for. You see the difference, different parts in your wood, and you see where the cambium is located. It's just a thin layer underneath your inner bark there. And you're trying to make cambium contact. If you don't make cambium contact, your grafting is going to fail. Doesn't matter if all this other stuff lines up. You got to line up that one little bitty tiny area between scion and rootstock. And this is another picture. You see the black line there. That's the cambium outlined right there, where you can give you an idea of the thin layer that you're dealing with. Like I said, I borrowed this picture from somebody else that I've looked at their grafting videos in the past. They've got some good grafting videos. But that's my presentation. Now I'm gonna do some hands-on demos and show you, hopefully I can answer some of your questions as you see that. But there's my Tina knife right there in the middle. How do you do that?
Stop share.
I was looking up. And as I said later, I've been grafting since '85. Over years, I've collected all this stuff to graft with. I don't use anymore, but I keep it anyway. And actually, when I do my graft, I use this little bucket now. This is just perfect. I hope everything I need when I go out in the yard. I gather up everything I want to use, and I'll put this little bucket. And again, I'll talk about grafting knives. I mean, here's a utility knife. Here's a grafting knife. My daughter bought this off of, I think, Amazon for me for my birthday or something. This knife has a left hand and right hand blade. So I was really surprised. So actually, I use it occasionally when I have some really hard wood, because I can actually pull a little harder. So my go-to knife is my left-handed Tina grafting knife. And this is like I said, this knife here is I've used more than any of them now. And then for like you're doing avocados or something, I really like these shift injectors. I mean, used to back in the old days, people shaved with these. I don't know if anybody still shaves with them, but you probably make a bloody mess out of yourself. But you can order these shift injectors off of Amazon, and I bought these little panels somewhere off Amazon. And what I like about it is you use one side, and then you turn it over, and you got a sharp side on the other side of the usage. And what I like too is when you get through the blade, you just show it here, it's out of the way. I done a lot of grafting with this last week, so I had to change the blade. So, and also these come with a cover, so when I reach my bucket, I don't cut my hand. And that secures in place. Like I said, I'll do grass with this, and then I'll turn it over and use it again. And I mentioned labels.
I'm sorry, I'm asking a question. Is that handle on that chicken injector, is that kind of like an exacto handle?
It is, yes, this is actually exactly open.
Okay.
Don't want to pass that to me. Speaking of labels, this is actually my favorite labels right here. I like these metal tags because with these, you just take just a bad ballpoint pen, you can write the name on it. And what I like is sometimes I'll write who I got it from, I'll write a date on the back or other information just for my reference later. So the only issue with these is they come with these little bitty skinny wires, and they're not any good. Because under my place, the wind blows all the time. I see the tag rocking and rocking and rocking, and the tag just falls off. And so you need to get a heavier wire like this to hang the tag with. If you don't, you'll come back later and say, "Where's my tag?" And if you're lucky, it's right there below the tree where it fell. But as windy as it is in my place, it could be there, it could be not. So if you're gonna use these, don't use the wire it comes with, unless, now when I'm grafting, when I'm laying stuff inside the greenhouse, it's gonna be out of the wind. I'll use that little skinny wire, but when I hang this in the yard, actually I went to the point of taking this, and I take a little piece of rebar, and I wrap this tag will actually fit in a wrap. I'll wrap it around the rebar and wrap it with this piece of wire, and then I can stick a piece of rebar down by my tree, and my label's there before I stuck it. And then another thing I like is I've got these foldable pruning shears I use. And I use these all the time when I'm grafting. It's nice because it fits right in my pocket. And it even has a knife blade when you cut something. But I got this as a gift years ago from Brookstone, and they don't offer this anymore because I'd like to find another one. So anyway, when I prepare to graft, what I like to do
looking for your X-Acto knife.
no, my buddy tag.
Oh, your
Oh, it's
buddy.
up on the
Oh.
podium.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Yeah, I thought I laid it over there. It didn't. Well, I'm gonna show you the difference. Here's the paraffin, when I started grafting back in the 80s, this is all I used was paraffin. Like I said, one reason I don't like this is I have to cut it, which is, guess it's not a major complaint, but I mean, getting used to stuff being convenient. This lasts a long time that way. And usually I cut it in strips because I don't need something that wide. What I'll show you the difference is, if I take this with a piece of buddy tape. Here's my buddy tape. I'll get it ready for a piece of red. That's enough to wrap the Scion right here. It does. Make sure you buy what's called perforated when you buy it.
Is that kind of like being micropore tape?
Who?
Is it like medical micropore tape?
Yeah, this is just paraffin units, but not the buddy tape.
So it's like paper and not plastic?
No, this is a paraffin like tape film. This is the seal. This will hold moisture in and let air out. Because I saw the other day someone posted on our Facebook page, and all these grafts with plastic bags tied around. Plastic bags will hold moisture in, but lets no air out. So all you're doing is baking it. My greenhouse is 30 by 50. It'll get 115 degrees while these things seal up. So you take a little bitty bag and you tie it on a limb like a full sun. It's just gonna bake it. So I see that. I'm like, first off, don't put a plastic bag and tie a plastic bag for the graft. You can use paraffin or buddy tape, and it'll seal the moisture in and let air out. But here's a piece of buddy tape. See how far that stretches? And it hasn't broke yet. Okay, here's a piece of paraffin. Cut the same length. And it breaks quicker. And another key I was going to tell you is when you get ready to use this, you need to store it in the house and keep it cool for the last a long time. But when you get ready to go outside and graft, I put my shirt pocket and let my body heat warm it up because it stretches better warm. So when you get ready to use it, if you can warm it up, like I said, just put it in your shirt pocket, next to your body, warm it up, it makes it work better. And what I like to do before I graft is typically not before I know what I'm going to do. And so actually I'm going to start with a low pot. I had a hard time finding what I want to prove today. So here's a low pot Scion. And another thing I see people with videos, I see them put a graft union together, and then they start wrapping paraffin around their Scion. If you're going to put paraffin around your Scion, do it before you put the graft union together. My biggest thing is I'll tell you, if you're going to graft something, once you put it together, keep your hands off of it. leave them alone. I mean, you don't know, you may barely made candy in contact, and you're gonna put your hands on it, and rock it back and forth, trying to wrap it. And a little bit of contact that you made, you just destroyed, wasted your time. So anyway, here's a low block Scion, and well, this is my buddy tape. And all you do is spin and wrap, spin and wrap. And I've got it wrapped up. And here's a low block rootstock. This is just a seedling, just a random seedling that I grew. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna do the side graft. So what I like about the side graft, especially for evergreen stuff, you still have all these leaves that are providing nutrition to the rootstock while you wait for your grafting to take. So I'm gonna go right down here, put my knife in.
And it's all the way through.
Yeah, that's the cut right there.
I see.
And you notice I rocked, I didn't shove my knife into this and shove it into my fingers. I mean, I just rocked it in there. And like I said, your knife is nice and clean and sharp. You should be able to just gently rock it and make your cut. If you're forcing it, then be prepared for blood. And then I'm gonna make a wedge cut on this because it's still just like making a cleft graft. Another thing, you got cleft or wedge, either one. And another thing is you want one clean cut. You don't want to whittle. This is not a time to whittle. And when you're whittling it, you're creating uneven surfaces. So I made my first cut, it's nice and flat. I'm gonna make a wedge cut on the opposite side. And this, if you miss, then you just go back and do it again. The problem I'm having is it's called my buddy tape. And it's in the dark, I can't see. There. If you cut too much off one side, you gotta go back to the other side again. Okay. So I've got a wedge that's flat on each side. Now we'll stick that wedge into here.
Usually that's good.
What type of graft is this?
This is called like a side wedge graft.
And
Is it also loquat or?
Yes, it's a low. I actually got I had a selected variety of loquat. I took this cutting off before I came.
What's the name of the variety?
It's called Kitty Cosmo. I've never tried it. Your friends from California sent me the wood Graft took, and I've got Kitty Cosmo on it, so I'll just wait to see what the Kitty Cosmo tastes like. People make up all kinds of names for stuff, and when I get it labeled that way, I go with whatever they send me. Because I want to be hunting this later, because my biggest irritation, people want us to change names and put different names on stuff. If someone selected this and named it Kitty Cosmo, I'm sorry, we got to stick to it. But a lot of people do it for different reasons. Now, this is the linerless tape. What I'm doing is I'm pulling this grafting in tight now.
Just one question.
So
that buddy tape is just helping like a little mini greenhouse on that. It's like a little mini.
It is. Exactly. What it does is hold moisture in and lets heat out.
Okay.
Yeah, you're exactly right. You know, it's basically because people are used to, try to tent stuff and put sticks and hold it in up or air come out the bottom. So basically you put a miniature greenhouse over this Scion and then like I said, it'll let the heat and air out, but it holds the moisture in. And the good thing about that is, say, as you're learning to craft and you're not making good cuts, but you pull this thing up top, it's more forgiving. It keeps your Scion alive longer while you wait for this grafting to take. I may have barely made candy contact somewhere in here, but by putting this buddy tape on here, it'll keep the Scion alive longer while the grafting heals up on its own. But that's a finished graft. And what I like about this linerless tape is for years, I used this tape for graft unions. This vinyl tape. When we use the vinyl tape before the graft union together, I got to tie a knot at the end. And to me, that's faster. It's easier, and my fingers are just too fat for that. I don't know, something just didn't work right. So I got several rolls of bottom tape I don't use.
There's some
Right.
questions online about the tape.
Which tape?
So maybe you could put up
The
each
black-
tape and give a better description of each one.
Yeah, well, I have a picture of my presentation.
So can we talk about what the black tape is?
Yeah,
And the budding tape. They don't know how to spell
but Buddy is Buddy like your buddy.
it. Buddy.
Oh, there it is. Yeah, she's got the name right there. There's the black tape right there. I didn't realize it's inside. Yeah, the Buddy tape is BUDDY tape.
Mhm. And can you pick it up and show the package or something?
No, I don't have the package.
Oh, okay.
You know, I always threw it away.
This is the buddy tape.
But don't be tricked into like Amazon. Amazon has something called Buddy tape. I saw on eBay for Buddy tape. It's like $10. It's a miniature roll of saran wrap. And so when you get it, you can with HEB and both your saran wrap and expect it to slice off and it's the same thing. It's not Buddy tape.
Do you know the brand name of the buddy tape?
It's Buddy tape. That is
The brand name.
Brand name is Buddy tape.
You get it from AM Litter.
AM Leonard's, yes. AM Leonard's a good source. Yeah, AM Leonard's usually a reliable source and their wood is actually fresh. Because some of your eBay sellers will have some 2 or 3 years old. And I was telling people earlier today, I had a friend pick some Buddy tape up on me a few years ago. He hauled around on the dash of the truck for a couple of weeks to be salted. When I got it, it's all nice and yellow like this. And so if you get your Buddy tape, and it's not this color,
This one?
it's this color, you just been robbed. So anyway, I paid for it because I agreed to buy it, but this stuff doesn't store well in your car. It's not made to haul around your car and let it get 110, 20 degrees. Like so I keep this in the house and I'll put it in the laundry room, I get ready to use it. Then like I said, you see how it stretches way better. I mean, like I said, I've got parafilm, I got plenty of it, and I keep it because when I run out of Buddy tape, I will use parafilm, I'll use the parafilm film, but it's not my go-to first choice. I'll do one more low part graph.
I wanted to ask, how do you decide where on the stem to place the graft?
Well, me personally, I started grafting lower after February 2021. I used to be a high grafter because, I started grafting 85, I was really good at it. And so I grafted high because I could graft up here. If it didn't take, then I could graft down here and do it again. Well, now, I had a lot of trees I grafted that way. When a freeze came, they were killed back in rootstock. So now I want to be a low grafter and I want to actually get this Scion to eventually take root on its own. So I'm going to keep moving my mulch shelf each year a little higher gradually until the Scion is under dirt. And then February 2021 comes again, I won't care.
So if you have like a full-grown tree and you want to put some grafts on it, you do it like on an outer stem or where on the tree?
Well, one thing you gotta be aware of is, some trees will shed limbs. That's the other thing. I grafted some pawpaw trees like in 2001 and all my grafts took. I didn't know as pawpaw trees grow up, they would shed their lower limbs. Well, I grafted all the lower limbs because they're easy to reach, they're easy to get to. And I came home from work one day, my limbs are on the ground. I'm like, what happened here? And so, to me, I would try to look at your tree. First off, prune it the way you want to. If you have some overgrown branches you want to get rid of those. Pick up, another thing, if you have a tree that you can go onto in your yard, you usually can pick a limb that matches yours, same diameter, or pretty close. And I would pick a limb that, apples and pears don't really shed limbs, so you don't have to really worry about it. But what I would try to think about is the limbs I may cut off in the future. So pear tree will grow straight up. I wouldn't be grafting that central leader on the pear because you're gonna be cutting it out. So pick a side branch or somewhere, not at the bottom, somewhere like in the middle, and go be it. Like I said, that central leader, to me, I'll be honest with you, all fruit trees, people ask me about fruit trees should be this tall. How tall are you? Can you reach all the fruits that stand on the ground? Go to a U-pick nursery. If you don't, or U-pick orchard, if you don't know how tall a fruit tree should be, go to a U-pick orchard and you see you can reach all the fruit from the ground. That's how high your fruit tree should be. I got all these friends in their seventies and eighties, broke their hips, broke their knees, broke something, trying to get that one more piece of fruit from the lap. And so I've tried to learn that from them, not let my trees grow straight up. And so keep your trees as tall as you can reach. If you stand flat footed, that's how I know. Now, I mean, unless you're growing a shade tree. If you're growing a shade tree, then let it go straight up. But here's my other low plot scion. And I'm gonna do the cleft graft with this one just because I want to demo it. So when I'm doing a cleft graft, here's what I do. And again, you know, I just told you I will go low. So I just cut it off.
Do you know what variety this one is?
It's just a random seedling. Random seedling, I have no clue. And when I look at this, my scion is just a little, not quite the same diameter as my rootstock. So instead of making my cleft cut right in the middle, typically make a cleft cut right in the middle, I'll actually offset it a little bit to see if I can get a little bit closer because they're shorter distance from side to side. So I'm gonna make this cut. See, I'm just rocking the knife. Don't force it. If you force it, like I said, the tip doesn't end well. And then like there's a knife in there, and then I'm gonna wrap my scion. Now actually, I'm gonna trim the scion down a little bit because it's too long.
You want it like 5 inches?
Yeah, it depends, because I'll show you in a minute. I'm gonna pull some of my persimmon scions out. And I grab stuff from this long, because you look at the number of buds. You know, I want 2 or 3 good healthy buds on stuff that I'm gonna grab. This low plot, you know, low plots are different. This is tip growth. It's got a lot of, you know, buds there can push. So I just cut it down to a manageable size. And usually, like I said, 4 to 5 inches more is sufficient. Low plot's a little different than, say, a pear or persimmon. Again, this scion's wrapped up, and I don't worry about wrapping the bottom because I'm gonna be cutting that anyway. And one thing people always say, oh my God, you're taking that and pulling that knife toward yourself. If you notice, I'm pulling the wood through it. I'm not yanking the knife toward myself. So don't yank the knife toward yourself either. I hear people. See how that side is not flat, it's not pointed, this side is. And so with that, I might make one more cut to try to flatten that side out. But what happens is, you know, like I said, you can't whittle. So what happens, you have to go and cut a little more wood off, so you shorten the piece of wood. That's why I say you gotta practice these cuts before you get that special piece of wood. Because before long, you're trying to keep making flat cuts, you're gonna run out of space. And I'll take the knife out, and you either take your thumb. See how the bark is slipping on that, see how the bark is getting loose. And then just push it in there. And I'm gonna line up outside here.
Is this how most citrus are done? Like the trees are done?
No, the citrus mostly is chip bud, tea bud. But you can do citrus this way if you like. You know, when I first started grafting, this is the only graft, I grafted everything this way. It didn't matter what it was, everything I grafted. And you know, people say, well, you should do chip buds and tea buds because you can get way more grafts. I don't feel comfortable doing it, so I didn't do it. I stuck to what I was comfortable with.
So you're trying to get the straight side of the sign on the outside.
Yes, you see, I got one side aligned and one side's not. So you gotta pick one side or the other. So one side is you're not gonna be aligned because the rootstock and Scion are not a perfect match. If you get a perfect match, then you'll be lined up on both. And occasionally you will get some of a perfect match. Or if you have a lot of rootstock to choose from or a lot of scions to choose from, you can try to look and match. Get them matched up. And I didn't show y'all with this linerless tape. When I get it rolled, I actually take my knife and I cut it right down the middle all the way around. Then I make 3 cuts in it where I can pull those strips off. Because I don't want a big old wide strip of it when I use it. I want a smaller strip. But usually, most stuff I graft is smaller stuff. Problem is, this roll I've had for a while, It's getting towards the end of its life, so it's starting to get new roll. So the tape's not coming off as good as it was when it was new.
So could you just use buddy tape for that?
You can. The only reason I like to use buddy tape with this is it doesn't pull as tight. I can pull tighter with this. Yeah, buddy tape. Now, when I do a chip bud with buddy, I use buddy tape. I actually put chip bud holder in place with the buddy tape. But with graft like this, I got a mismatch on the Scion rootstock. I'll actually use this because I can pull tighter, so I can try to force things into contact. And then I've got to see, you were asking earlier about length of piece of wood. Okay, here's a piece of persimmon wood. What I'm looking for is nice fat buds on this. And like this one here, there's nothing you need to look at on the wood. Like this bud is gone. There's not a good bud there, so I don't really like that piece.
How long ago did you cut those?
This was cut back in January. Another thing is that people say store your wood in refrigerator wrapped in paper towels, then you wind up with mold on it. Well, what I do is I use these bags like this. I put mine in the refrigerator and I just wet my hand and shake a couple drops of water in there and seal it up, put it in my refrigerator. I've used wood that's a year old, it's been fine. Whereas you do the paper towels, you gotta constantly take it out, rewrap it, and then you got mold growing and you start to decay your buds will actually start to rot.
And you don't need to re-water, reshake water into.
No, if you got a refrigerator in a Ziploc bag, you're gonna hold that moisture in there for until you get ready to use it.
They're asking for repeating the audience questions. I can't hear the audience, but I missed what the questions were. You guys remember?
And the person two over from me said she did that in the plastic bag and she still got mold. This lady.
How much water should you put in there?
I didn't put it.
Was your wood, wet and mold to start with? Did you collect on a rainy day and stick wet wood in the bag or? I don't know. You just got moldy wood.
Yeah, so there's a question about
What
whether,
what was it?
I feel it tornado.
Well, I mean, I don't know, I mean, now I haven't stored big wood long term. So I don't know, persimmon, pear, I've stored long term. Figs, I'm usually sticking in there and going ahead and getting those rooted. But you're asking how long the piece of wood is. This has got two really good buds. See these buds that are swollen out right there? I really like those two buds. Those are two nice buds. And I only leave this like this because I got room. So I can cut away at this one until I run out of wood.
so is this a native persimmon that you're doing or?
No, this is a sage oak persimmon. It's a really good Asian persimmon that does really good here. And see, I have 5 rootstock plants here, so I can actually look at these 5 and say, I can see this was way too big, this was not, all these, and I found one over here, it's almost a identical match. So I'll go with that. This is American persimmon rootstock.
So one that's in the cookies.
Yeah. And actually, like I said, this is the wrong time. It's still kind of early for persimmons, but I won't do the demo anyway for the sake of it.
Did you grow these from just seeds?
From seeds, yeah. And you can order them, you can order several places online to order seedlings. But like I said, luckily there's a friend that lives way out east of them. They gave me a whole big bag of seeds. And again, like I said, I like to wrap, I'm going to wrap my Scion. If you're going to wrap anything, do it before you do the graft. Don't put it on here and then, I'm going to wrap this with buddy tape or paraffin. Do the wrapping first.
And then you're gonna cut off some of the paraffin when you do the graft?
What's going to happen is I'm going to make my cut until I get to the paraffin. It doesn't matter.
Okay.
It doesn't matter if the paraffin's still on there. If I make a cut right up here, I'm going to go ahead and, because the cadmium is going to be exposed. There won't be any tape there anymore, but the tape from outside doesn't matter.
You're taping twice, really?
Hmm?
You're taping twice, really?
Wait a minute, I'm taking the
You do the
black.
paraffin or what, the plastic stuff and then the black.
The black is just for pressure, that's the whole union together.
So
This is to maintain moisture,
maintain.
And the black is just to, for pressure.
Well, maybe green.
Yeah, basically miniature greenhouse.
ASMR. Cutting.
I like any close-up shots. What? What you say?
Oh, it's like ASMR where you get really like high fidelity sound,
Mm.
cutting sounds.
Yeah, we should have done this a long time ago.
I can't see my. I'm used to doing this bright light, I can't see anything.
We could turn the light on. Yeah,
Yeah, like I said, I'm looking for my stuff, I can't see it.
is that better?
Yeah, like I said, I do this outdoors where it's nice and bright. I'm like, I can't see anything in here. Oh, I'm going to show y'all too how to avoid cutting yourself when you're making a cleft graft into your rootstock. I'll do that next. This one's got, another thing you run into is you'll have a bad knot in a piece of wood and you can't get a clean cut. And so you might have to cut higher than you wanted to get past that knot in it.
So when ideally would you want to graft persimmon?
Probably next month is when I'll actually start grafting persimmons in the house. Put that funny stuff on. What I look for is usually the leaves will be about 50% emerged, and the rootstock's in perfect state. And a lot of times you can actually take the knife and just leave it peeled open until you push it in. And I look at both sides a lot of times to see which side looks the best. And actually this outside looks better.
I have to say that with Angel taking that close view, this is really much easier to see than if we were all trying to gather around.
Yeah.
Because we just couldn't see it, couldn't see what you're doing.
And I mentioned earlier, that a lot of times people want to cut themselves when they're trying to do a cleft or wedge graft cut. So when you do this, don't put your finger and knife like this. Do it like this. Put your knife like this. And that way, if your fingers are parallel to the blade and it pushes through, you should get less medium. At least it lessens the chances because your fingers are open because they're around around the rootstock. And like I say, sometimes you just hit wood, there's like a soft spot and boom, your knife just goes flying through it, and boom, it's in you. So if you do your fingers that way, you can avoid at least that a little bit.
Found any gloves that you feel comfortable where you can be agile enough?
No, I've tried some, but what I like is, I want to be able to feel the wood. So when I'm wrapping my tape, I didn't show them. When I'm wrapping tape, I'm actually taking my film and I push that side that I lined up to make sure I maintain alignment. So with glove on, now you got something else in the way you're trying to feel your way through. And like I said, with practice, I mean, you should be able to make these cuts without getting hurt, without cutting yourself. You don't want to be watching YouTube videos and cutting and watching the dog and watching TV. And to me, I go like grafting my greenhouse by myself, and I don't want to talk about it. I've done like 70 grafts the other day, and
No, I didn't see no blood, but there was nobody out there bothering me, I was all by myself, so when I'm with people, it takes longer because I'm talking, I'm trying to show stuff as I go.
So there's a question, is there a reason you wouldn't use the buddy tape to hold the bind
Yeah,
instead
but-
of the electrical tape? Also, any reasonable worry of the chemicals in the electrical tape affecting the organic status of the plant?
Oh, I remember reading that tape, so I'm not sure.
Rubber tape, it's not electrical tape.
It's splicing too. That's what I'm using.
Yeah, I mean, I think people eat Tupperware, they live in houses with vinyl all throughout them, so.
Is the quantity, isn't it?
Yeah, so I mean, you bought milk today in a plastic jug,
They're,
so
they're also asking what kind of soil.
I'm not here to do a soil talk, that's something.
Right.
I'm not gonna get into that, that's all really.
It's okay.
I'm not trying to
Question.
be, I'm not trying to be rude, but I'm just not.
Another,
It's
another
a
topic.
whole other topic.
Just asking the questions.
Oh, yeah, I'm just answering. I mean, I'm sorry, but I mean, you
It's a
know,
long answer.
yes, those questions there are out there, like I said, this. I mean, this tape here, the buddy tape is biodegradable, so. That's another reason I like that, I mentioned that earlier, like I said, a little biodegrade on its own. And also the lineless tape will actually start to biodegrade on itself too. So I like it for that reason, because you use regular electrical tape, this vinyl tape stays forever, it just really does not want to go away.
Biodegradability, very nice.
Yeah.
Let's say you didn't wrap your scions, what do you think the odds of failure are, like half or?
You know what, I don't always wrap all my Scion. I've got it coming with my greenhouse right now. Because I've done a bunch of grafts the other day, and by the end of the day, my fingers are tired of doing all this rolling.
Yeah.
Because you're sitting there, I'm pulling this tape and I'm rolling my fingers, I'm rolling. And I was doing cheese, which is real thorny, and I was tired of that rolling and going, sticking in my fingers, and I quit wrapping. I was like, you're not getting wrapped anymore. And actually, I'll be honest with you, most times it's not even necessary. It's just something I've always done. And as I got used to it, I feel if I'm going to the effort, I just want to try to guarantee 100% chance. But with certain things like pears and cheese, or I'm grafting those, I don't worry about it. I did 20 pear grafts and I wrapped about 5 and I quit. Those pears, I've always said a blind person with a butter knife can graft pears. I mean, to me, I feel like you should start with pears. Pears will build you false confidence, and you'll find out you got other things to learn. But if you start with pears, what I like about pears is pears will let you believe it's possible. You know, and that's what I think, man, you need to believe it's possible. So if you start out with the most difficult stuff and you fail, you don't think that guy's totally a bunch of bull, this stuff don't work. And so, and like I said, the buddy tape is just a preference, it's not, go ahead.
So when it buds out, do you unwrap it?
No, this is biodegradable. I never touch this again. This will actually just rot away on its own. That's the other thing I like about buddy tape is it just, even the buddy tape and the paraffin film, both of these films will biodegrade on their own. So whatever you're wrapping is, you forget about it. And also you pull it really thin as you wrap, and the buds just pop through really easy too. And so that's another reason I like it. But like what I like is, you know, if you're grafting some stuff and you'll set it like windy conditions or undesirable conditions, with the wrapping with the buddy tape, it buys you some more time. That's what I like about it. So it allows you to be, you don't have to be as good or as careful if you wrap your scions. If you don't wrap them, then you need to make sure everything else is really good.
You don't try to wrap over that terminal bud, though, please.
Yeah, no, all the buds are right. Every single bud. Yeah, the buds will push right through this. Yeah, the buds will come right out. There's no problem at all. And actually, I was going to show you, this is what the utility knob. I got a nice flat side there. And I don't worry about the other, other side because I'm not reliant on both sides. And actually, there's one trick I didn't show you on buddy tape. If you don't have buddy tape, you take this buddy tape. Make a little rope out of it. And I can take it and do this. Yeah, that's the reason I rolled up as a rope to make it stronger. Instead of the black tape, and then I'll bound my grafting unit. But the problem I run into now is I like for the whole grafting unit to be sealed up. And you see that I have some exposure out there at the top. And so what I'll do is I'll look around, I probably always have like a little piece somewhere. And I'll just take this and seal this up. And like I said, the way I graft, it's not the only way. If you go out there and watch YouTube videos, you're gonna have to find 101 ways. You're gonna find everybody's personal preference, what works for them. This is what I've been doing. It's successful for me. I stick to it. I show it to people. The majority of people I've shown it to, it's been successful for them. So I'm gonna stick to it until someone shows you a better reason to do something else. I mean, I used vinyl tape for years. And when I went to this and found out how to tie a knot at the end, because I was doing a lot of grafting, tie that knot, you got your vinyl tape full as tight as you can get. You go to pull that knot, tie that knot, and it slips, and all that whole thing is loosens up on it.
Yeah.
You wrap with this, and it holds as it goes. It sticks to itself as you roll it, and you don't have to worry about tying it up when you're done. It's over with, you're finished. And that's why I like this, and I recommend this product. And like I said, I don't know anything like, all I know is just 3 inches Scotch brand, 130 sea line with steak. And that's all I know about it. I bought it off Amazon. Amazon's usually cheaper. Let's see, what's that? And here's another piece of wood. I was gonna, if you talk about selecting buds, this is a piece of pear wood.
I'm gonna ask if there's any questions online. I don't know if they can hear me though. Can they hear me from here?
And this one here has got like 6 buds, and all 6 buds look really good. And typically I look for 2 buds, so I'll just cut it right above this bud here. So that leaves 2 good buds, and we're gonna make my cut.
How far from the node you want to cut?
How far from the node do you want to cut?
Yeah, I mean, you see right here, I left room. I'm not right on top of it, because you cut right there on top of it, you're gonna danger this bud. So I'm gonna leave enough wood here to protect the bud, and I'm not gonna cut into the bud to, try to risk killing the bud too. So you can see how much room I left. Just looking, just gonna depend on the bud size. I mean, you need to leave ample room above the bud, or you're not cutting into the bud, because you take this, say this piece of wood right here. It's gonna be different. So we look at this one, I cut up this bud. So it's gonna be different. Yeah, but it depends on the wood. But you see, I left enough wood to protect the bud. When you leave, to me, I want to leave enough wood to protect that bud.
All right, so I'm gonna ask online if anybody has any questions.
Sure.
So if you online want ask a question, you want to unmute and go ahead and ask. Anybody there online on Zoom who wants to ask a question? It's your moment.
Now, is that particular Scion that you're using, it's cut both top and bottom?
Well, Joe, this one? No, we'll be, because I cut it off the tree. So it's cut there, but I'm gonna cut this off anyway. I'm gonna make the cuts with this. So I'm gonna make my cut here, my wedge cut here. And like I said, I cut the top because this piece of wood is big enough, I can make one more cut. So I can make 2 grafts with this piece of wood.
Oh, okay.
So I actually,
And so you want to make sure that you sealed off the top of that lower piece.
yeah, and all I'm trying to do is make sure it doesn't dry out. And I'll actually wrap this piece up because I have another rootstock at home. I can use it when I get home. And I want a few more of this variety, so I'll wrap that up. And put
Can
it
you
on.
remind us what variety this is?
This is Hotsui pear, and that's sage persimmon, and then Kitty, Cosmo, what? And this is my pear rootstock.
So there's a question. Do you always want the scion to go on the base rootstock, or could you theoretically graft like 8 different pears on 8 different branches of a pear tree?
Yes.
Are there any downsides to grafting a lot of scion varieties to one tree?
The only downside you'll run into is if you lose track of what you have. I did that one time and I was a branch that was crossing, I was going to get rid of, and I cut the branch and cut off one of my varieties. So make sure you label everything well and try to look at the good, well spaced out branches. If there's no problem, I recommend it, especially if you have a small yard, you don't want, or you don't want eight varieties of pears. I really highly recommend it. But like I said, just be aware, when you do your pruning, don't cut off the branches you added. Because you get 8 or 9 on there, and again, you lose track.
So do you put like a piece of tape on there to say this and like label that tape, or I saw your metal bit, but
I would use metal labels, but before I use metal labels, you know, the metal labels cost more, so. Well, I don't have one in here, but when I do my grafts initially, I use a plastic label that wraps around and glues back to itself. And then when the graft takes, you get a metal label.
yeah, those labels they use on roses, and they last years and years.
Yes, so use the plastic labels first, in my opinion. Now, you know, I even use these, you know, if I stick them in pots, I just label these and stick them in pots. So I start out with either this or a plastic wrap label, and then when the graft looks successful, then I move on to a better label, a permanent label.
Are you guys, you mentioned like the cocktail trees, are there, you know, groups at all, like with different varieties together on what recommendation you have that?
What's that now?
Can I put, an avocado on a pear tree?
No, you can't. No.
Can I just mix and match, make my.
No, when I say cocktail tree, it's gonna be 8 apple varieties, or 8 pear varieties, or 8 peach varieties.
I've heard about these crazy trees with different fruit.
Yeah, there's
What
some-
are those? What's the deal with that?
Which ones?
Like, there's a movement where people like, I can't remember, California or something, and they want fruit available, so they've been grafting to just whatever the fruit tree is, but different kinds of trees, so that there's multiple, you know, it's like a fruit cocktail, right? Is that what
Sometimes
they're-
you do the same genus.
But they're not the same tree.
Yeah, I'm not
I don't know how
sure.
they're doing that.
Yeah, I don't know, it's to me, you know, at least they're the same species, there's some exceptions. You know, so, to me, you need to start out apples to apples, pears to pears, you know, peaches to peaches.
Sounds like advanced level.
Yeah, because I mean, even loquats, I've got a loquat tree at the house that I grafted over 10 years ago on the quince rootstock.
Yeah.
And it's been on quince and the loquat's this tall.
So there's a sunlight on the plot.
No,
Not citrus.
No, it's totally different.
So is there something about citrus that the reason why we don't talk about that or work with it?
No, I mean, yeah, we can do citrus. I mean, citrus, the problem with citrus is there are so many disease issues. So I don't ever recommend people bring in citrus budwood to anything like this.
Oh, okay.
Because I don't want to chance someone bringing a piece of diseased wood, that someone take it home and lock out someone else's collection. There's just too many issues with citrus, so I just always say no citrus.
Because I have lots of citrus that lost rootstock or lost grafts.
Yeah.
I mean, lots.
Well, I said, you know someone that has some disease-free trees that you get some wood from, but I would never tell everybody to bring citrus wood, and everybody just throw citrus wood on table back there.
Yeah.
And
So
you don't know what happened.
I have a typo with orange, since you add grass citrus on there, since I know they use for grass for citrus, typo with orange.
Yes, yeah, that's correct. That's what I use for rootstock.
Okay, so if I have a typo with orange, I can use with any citrus branches and graft it on there.
That's correct.
In about the same exact way, right? Okay.
I wanted to share a story. It's not like real quick about what you just said. My father-in-law grafted onto Eureka lemon trees, tangerines and orange and all that. And for years and years and years, and nothing happened. And then just a couple of years ago.
30 years,
Yeah, like 30 years.
no fruit.
Finally, we start getting some
Stay up with some of the-
orange. So be patient.
Be patient. Well,
I believe in patience, I'd be shocked.
well,
Citrus is actually fruit, citrus should fruit almost the first year you do it. If you wait 30 years, you miss. You waste a lot of time waiting, that's all I can say.
well, most of my citrus is frozen to the ground anyway, so.
Well, citrus, you expect fast results. I mean, that's a fast, usually pretty fast. When you buy a citrus tree or grafted citrus tree, if you don't have fruit within a couple of years, something's wrong. I mean, because typically when you buy the tree, it's already got
Fruiting wood.
it's got,
Do you know what the nurseries are doing with these, you see the improved Meyer lemon, you know, with their, like, what improved?
well, I mean, it's been, I can't remember what the improved was. I read it one time, and I think that's really the only what's the right one for, is improved Meyer lemon. But honestly, I only grow a few citrus, and I looked it up one time, but someone asked me that same question, and I don't remember what the improvement was. But supposedly something make it better than regular Myers lemon, but I honestly don't know what it was.
They said improve refers to the California state tested virus-free clone, a collaborative discovery, et cetera, early 1950s. Trees are more compact than true lemons, are ideal for containers growing indoors or outside, often two bloom cycles spring fall, provided fruit much of the year.
Okay, there you go.
So you got a really good slant on that. Is there a link that you're trying to get that?
Yeah, I'm trying to, I made it too long. And this wood is harder than I was expecting. Plus, the other thing is, a lot of times, so why don't you decide what you do when you do it? Well, one thing depends, is when I cut into the wood, how hard is the wood? If I'm best to cut up, a lot of times I won't do my side graft. I'm pushing out and if I look away or make a mistake and I chop the top off, now it's a turn it away to cleft graft. So you gotta learn multiple grafts where you can improvise as you go along. But like I said, the cut though is really based on how, when I hit the wood with the knife, how soft or hard it is. Sometimes you'll hit a knot. A lot of times there'll be a knot in the wood you don't see, and it makes it harder, and you wind up whittling away. You don't really want to see what I did there. And so that's something you don't want to do there.
So that was.
Did you split the rootstock?
Yeah, I split the rootstock,
So that's a.
and that happens too. And so
Can you not just bracket?
no, I'm not, because that's, you're kind of doing surgery on this. You're just doing more catastrophic damage to it. So you can do that. And that's, goes back to when I used to graft really high, you had room to make more mistakes. I used a really thin knife. I should have really used my knife here, which opened it up a little bit better. I used a little X-Acto knife, which didn't open the cut up as much, but I thought I'd be able to cheat on it. It didn't matter.
Thank you very much. That was a really good class. That really helped.
Okay, no problem. Like I said, if anybody ever has a question, feel free to email me. I don't mind answering this because, to me, the biggest thing I want people to go away with is know this is anybody can do this. It's not complicated. It doesn't require special tools. It doesn't require, some people want to pretend like you need a PhD to do this. That's bullcrap.
What if I can remove the black pear tape, whatever, every time?
Yeah, and normally what I do with the black tape, honestly, when I have a graft using the sealant, I leave it alone until, as long as everything's going really active, I leave it alone. Now, if it looks like the Scion is starting to deteriorate, the leaves are not forming properly normally, you need to get that thing cut loose because it must be gurgling a Scion. But as long as I don't see any adverse effects to my Scion, I'll leave the tape on for a year or more until I get around to it. I'll get out there. Right now I'm busy grafting, so I'm not removing anything. But come fall, as I'm looking at everything, you know, I'm not as busy grafting, then I start cutting tape loops. And it's just when I get around to it, it's not like, oh, if I don't cut tape loops 2 weeks, it's detrimental. No, but I do try to watch my grafts and to make sure that the scions not deteriorating. If they start deteriorating, you need to do something.
Deteriorating, meaning that it's getting smaller and.
The leaves are not forming normally, you know, the leaves are looking deformed or abnormal, and that's what I consider deteriorating. If it's not nice, healthy leaves like it was putting on originally, if those leaves are the quality of the leaves being produced are declining, then I want to cut the union loose or cut and take loose.
Have you found any benefit to adding, you know, inoculant to mycorrhizal, inoculant to the Scion before adding the using the graft?
No, but I will mention one thing I have done is like when I get, you know, I get wood in the mail, you know, and I've got stuff from out of the country before, this takes a while, but you know, have to import legally. And it's spent 7 weeks in the mail. These 7 weeks later it arrived. So I cut the very base of the cutting off. I'll cut the very base off and just soak it in water overnight before I grab, just try to rehydrate it a little bit.
Is there a technique for mailing? Is it the same as like put it to a Ziploc full of water?
Yeah, well, you know, to me, when you're mailing, you know, you don't know how else to stay in the mail, so we expose a lot of heat, you know, mail person's riding around in the car, and you don't know how it's going to be treated once it leaves your hands. And so I mail stuff, and I get a lot of stuff mailed to me, and unfortunately, when you agree to trades and people are mailing stuff, you never know what you can get. Sometimes you get really good stuff, and that's the other reason I mentioned you need to be able to work with a piece of wood that long or a piece of wood that long, because you never know. You know, somebody says, "Oh, we'll trade you some scions." They mail them to you, and there's little bitty twigs that show up. I mean, I traded with a guy in Washington a while back for some pearwood I've been looking for years. When it showed up, it was tiny, tiny twigs. He sent me like, let's see if I can find one of the size. I don't think I have anything that's small. No, I don't. I mean, he sent me like 6 tiny twigs. Well, you know, it's a trade, and I want you just don't complain. You just do the best you can. I put it together and hope for the best and hope it takes. And because I don't know, I heard you complaining. I guarantee you won't ever get another piece of wood again. So
with this low plot variety that you've got a Scion sent to you, was there something about the flavor or what was it that made you interested?
the person in California claims it's the best they've ever had. So, but you know, I always take the best I've ever had with a grain of salt, because you know, when I started planting fruit trees in the 80s, I drove over 3 hours to taste this fruit. And I spent the rest of the day trying to get that taste out of my mouth. And so
Maybe it compares to what they've had in the past.
exactly. Well, another thing I found is that they're a heavy smoker and they tell you the fruit's great. There you go. That's usually their taste buds have been compromised, and so
Are these your trees over here on the side?
they are.
Oh, okay.
But
I don't know if you forgot about
Do
it.
you keep a log of how many different varieties you grafted?
yeah, I actually got it right here.
What?
Yeah, my notes on my phone.
You have a running list spreadsheet? Wow. So
Yeah.
can you tell us how many persimmons?
Yeah.
I didn't see any persimmon budwood in the back. Is there?
Yeah, there was, and there's some right here.
Oh, okay.
There's the.
Wow.
Yeah, that's the stuff I'm reading right now, but doesn't have a number yet. And then I got wish list, I got 40 ground.
Wow.
And then this is cuttings I recently got. And then here's my wish list of things I may add.
And this is like, you're looking for these kind of
Yeah,
cuttings.
yeah, for those pigs, yeah. Let me see. Let me go back. Yeah, get out of this. No, no. Yeah, that's the thing I was talking for. Here's the guy. That's so good.
Do you have a story you want to share, maybe of one of your favorite kind of outcomes, like a graft that you did, you're just blown away by the outcome, flavor, or just.
Well, my biggest thing is, that's what this will look like.
That's all. What's your favorite?
Right now, my favorite's Avery. Everybody claims some of these other ones are better. This Avery one, or Avery, I'm not sure if it's Avery or Avery, but it came from Israel. And it's actually grown commercially in Israel. But it's been the best one I've ever eaten. I would, the thing is, I'm not afraid to taste the fruit. When my wife's walking somewhere and I find a sea fruit, and she said, "You don't need to put that in your mouth." I said, "Well, I'll break it open and taste a little bit of it." And it hasn't killed me yet. The problem is, I've had fruit in my yard I've been waiting for a long time to taste. And I walk out there and the birds will take the whole back out of it. So I gotta taste the other side. I'm not waiting another year. I'm patient, but I'm patient, but I'm impatient. I want to hurry up and taste it because, when I started this group in 07 in Houston, every meeting I bring a truckload of plants to them. I said, "Why you give these plants away?" Because I taste the fruit, it's not working.
I wanted to ask you, have you had any luck with trying to weird things, use of chamomile to?
I've heard about it, willow tree. I've always heard really good from social willow tree, but honestly, figs, roots are easy, and I don't do anything to them. Only thing I will do, the pin cuttings, I'll take them out. This is not a pin cutting, but well, I said my pin cuttings, what I'll do is take my refrigerator, and I just cut the bottom off. And then I'll take these and I actually do this and spray the side a little bit. Then I soak that in water overnight. And then I stick them in dirt. And I cut the bottom off clean, recut, and I just kind of spray it one side. Just spray it one side.
What's your favorite flavor?
Right now it's not 258. Especially you have.
Is that the one Mary wanted?
I don't know. I said, I'll be honest with you, I got Black Madeira, and I paid too much for it, and I would tell you else to buy it. I'm sorry, but I've been very underwhelmed with it. So, yeah, it's just, it's just good, but it's like, it's not $100. It's not that good. I've been disappointed. After 58, I paid $50 for. I actually rooted growing plant and then start producing things right away. It's very good. It's very good. So far, I have not used it yet. No, we just like a little brownish black, I think. I've got another one last year that done really good Sierra that I got from California. It made good fruit through the summer when it got really hot on my place. Yeah, it was like really good. And what I'm wondering is, some of these things from places in California where we don't get as hot. We get hotter here because I think last year we had probably over 30 something days over 100. And they don't get that hot. So I think we have a chance to get more flavor. I don't know, but these things, I got 44 ounces in ground, and I've got probably a dozen more I'm reading. I haven't updated my list yet, so I probably got 60 grams of fruits. So
is that what you read from the library or yourself?
I'm a question. I'm out trade, I said, when I'm grafting, I think I grafted 70 cheat trees the other day. I'm not putting 70 cheat trees in my place. I don't need 70 cheat trees. And I planted, I grafted 20 pears each other day. I already have 2 pears in the I'm not gonna place one more. I mean,
All
just.
right, y'all, we're
I
gonna say
grabbed
goodbye
one,
from the
grabbed
live
one,
stream.
and I tried to find out-
We're
I found
gonna do our
somebody had
Scion
some
exchange now, but
I tried to
thanks
find
for
one
tuning
more.
in.
And then I tried to leverage it out.
Ed, would you talk a little bit about getting good rootstock? I'm now relegated to containers on a patio,
Okay.
so I don't have nothing growing in the ground.
You know, that's something I forgot to mention, is grafting is not for planting. I help the planter, like help the tree, I've got to mention that.